Part 1. That night. The French people knew no color line. All they seemed to want to know that night was that a great national holiday of their ally was being celebrated, and that made the celebration one of their own. The spirit of emotional enthusiasm had gotten to the blood of our men, and they played as I had never heard them play before. Captain Major Arthur Little, 369th U.S. Infantry Regiment, Lincoln's Birthday Concert, Opera House, Nantes, France, February 12, 1918. On the night of Abraham Lincoln's birthday, the fires of war streaked across France's sky. A dogfight between French and German fighter planes sparked and buzzed in the distance. Moonlight fell like a cascade down over an opera house below, setting it aglow. Tuxedoed men and bejeweled women in floor-length gowns glided up marble steps under the watchful gaze of armed French and American soldiers. The mayor of Nantes greeted guests in the entrance with a sweaty brow. Military vehicles flanked the Nantes Opera House's perimeter. Inside, the all-white audience looked on curiously as a band played on stage. This was a band like they had never seen or heard before. Black soldiers from America who played French marches and classical overtures. David Pierce was one of those soldiers. He raised his cornet to his lips. He was joined by his second, Jimmy, a chipper young man and inspiring friend. What a strange sight, one old French woman sniffed as she watched the show. Who took the time to train them to play like that? How long do we have to listen, Father? A little girl speaking in French in ribbons and bows begged. Can we have a treat afterwards? The father patted her head. Not much longer, dear, I'm sure. Halfway through the show, Lieutenant James Reese Europe, the conductor, faced polite applause from the audience. His eyes were large behind round spectacles. At his gesture, the Harlem Hellfighters regimental band, all 40 of them, stood behind him and bowed. Everything about the band was strange, from the warm brown to black colors of each player's skin to the types of instruments they played. Some the audience had never seen before, especially the saxophone. In the crowd, an old man nodded off. On stage, Lieutenant Europe motioned for the band to resume their seats. As they did so, one player's chair squeaked. A lone snicker from the crowd filled the air, followed by a cough. Lieutenant Europe gave the player a look. Behind David and Jimmy, the percussion twins, two brothers, rustled. They appeared to disagree about something. Jimmy turned around to watch, but David nudged him to turn back around. The twins frowned at each other as they switched places. Their shoes squeaked. Someone in the audience coughed again. Lieutenant Europe gave the twins a look. The twins stopped bustling and saluted awkwardly. One twin took up his drumsticks, the other a large set of cymbals. They were ready. The band waited as the MC took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in French, "our esteemed guests will now entertain you with some songs from America in honor of their great president, Abraham Lincoln." Under Lieutenant Europe's direction, the band played "The Stars and Stripes Forever." By the end, the room was ringing with applause. The band then played some plantation melodies from the American South. Women dabbed at tear-filled eyes with embroidered handkerchiefs. And then came the fireworks, the Memphis Blues. The band's arrangement, a W.C. Handy's classic, was now their hit song back home, as it would now be in France. The band members half closed their eyes and seemed to forget where they were. They were no longer in the States, bracing themselves against the white man's relentless blows. They were free, playing their own music. They were loved, perhaps for the first time. The notes flying out of the cornets and clarinets multiplied and fluttered in the air like butterflies. The drummers tapped, banged, and smashed as they set their own time, followed by the soul-shaking crash of cymbals. The trombones let out a glorious wail. The audience cried out in ecstasy. And thanks to the French for their hospitality, the band closed with the Marseillaise. The march swung for 12 bars before the audience recognized their own anthem. As the recognition dawned upon them, they jumped to their feet in absolute rapture. Jimmy elbowed David. "They love us, man." Sergeant James Jimmy Peyton Journal. I'm hoping to write a book about this war. If I survive, that is. Last night was incredible. 3 amazing things happened all at once. Our band conquered France. I think David fell in love. We almost died in a German attack. Our concert drove those French folks crazy. I never felt more love. The applause went on forever, and I felt so warm in there, like in a cocoon. I didn't want to leave. David was brilliant on his cornet solo as always. I can only call him David in his journal. Out in the real world, he only wants to be called Pierce. He never shows his feelings, but even he got caught up in the excitement. I could tell. We are soldiers here sent to save these people, but we are their musicians too. When we're not in combat, our band tours the countryside to entertain the troops, the townsfolk, the wounded, and, well, the dead. This is just one part of a larger picture. Many of us here signed up for this war because we believe in Lieutenant James Reese Ure's vision. He says our doing well over here will show the world the excellence of black men, and that will make things better for our people back home. But back to that night. It took us a long time to get out of the opera house because the townsfolk wanted to shake our black hands to thank us. Wow. We then get invited to this little club not too far away. It was cold outside, but we didn't care. The place had good food and drinks. The music was nice, but so different from ours. First time seeing an accordion. The walls were painted red, and there were candles on each of the covered tables, so the room felt cozy. David got a table, and I hit the bar for a minute. I overheard Grenade Tommy, a band member, talking with another of our bandmates, Percival Fox. Grenade Tommy was gruff and an expert at grenades, earning a rare title, Grenadier. "Which team?" Fox asked. "Montgomery Gray Sox," Tommy answered. "Very fine position." "Third base." "Then you're just what I need," Fox said. "The hell you mean?" Tommy asked. "How we gonna play baseball while we dodging bullets?" Fox took a sip of his drink. "Same way we do back home." Grenade Tommy nodded. I joined David at a table near the stage. Smiling and fluffy feathered showgirls had been dancing the can-can just before. They were pretty, but you couldn't tell one from the other. But the singer who came after them, exotic, with just a touch of color to her smooth shoulders, bare shoulders, straps and sparkly blue and gold beads fastened at the back of her neck like a swan's neck, barely holding that silky, shapely dress up. Every man in the room wanted her, but we all knew we couldn't have her. Some things you just know. "Bonjour," she said. Then in English, "Club Paramore welcomes you. A round of applause for our brave American friends. My name is Giselle, and we are the Bon Nuit Band." What impressed me most was her rich voice, singing those old, sad French songs as if she'd lived every one. She and David stared at each other all night, and I realized They'd already made each other's acquaintance. When her set was done, they just walked up to each other on the dance floor like it was old times. He was tall and handsome, and she was beautiful. They were like a portrait of a moment in time. After a while, David brought her over to our table. "Bonjour, mademoiselle," I said as I kissed her hand. I was showing off my new French. She was pleasant enough, but there was this watchfulness about her. They were deep in conversation. He called her Songbird. I didn't eavesdrop, but I didn't need to. They were in their own world. I was getting up to give them some privacy when all of hell opened up right in front of us. This French guy walked up, all proper. He was tall with blonde hair, probably what the ladies would call handsome. Well-dressed, but real stiff. He yanked up Giselle and ignored David. He told her it was time to leave. Poor David. He looked confused, then angry, as he sized up French guy. When French guy pulled on Giselle's arm again, David jumped to his feet. I jumped up too. My thinking was French guy would have to get past the both of us. But Giselle shocked us by suddenly walking off with French guy. She didn't even look back. David tried to follow, but I pulled him back thinking we didn't know what that story was. Just as I was about to say so, there was a huge boom and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, all I could see was darkness. I smelled smoke. I heard women screaming. All around us, feet were shuffling. I realized I was on the floor. David appeared above me, and he was shouting. I shouted back, "What?" because my ears were ringing. David cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Blast!" I understood then. We were under attack. As I started to rise, I heard the tat-tat-tat of machine guns. "Down!" David shouted. He shoved me back to the floor. We drew our pistols and dashed behind an overturned table to use it for cover. We had been trained how to take cover just the other day. I remember David shouting, "Two hostiles, 12 o'clock. I saw 2 Germans barging through the front doors. A classic sneak attack with an explosion, then follow up with gunfire. Just learned about that too. It dawned on me that they could kill every one of us in there. Suddenly, David fired 2 quick shots at the men in the doorway, and they both went down. David is known as an expert shot. Hope I can get that good one day soon. This was the first time in my life using a gun. We scrambled to the front to watch the doors for more soldiers. Mostly everyone in the club had rushed to the back to hide under tables. David came face to face with one of our so-called fellow soldiers from the American Expeditionary Forces, the AEF. It was O'Dowd. We didn't like him. He didn't believe that Negroes should be serving in this war. O'Dowd had been shot. David asked him how bad he was hit. O'Dowd frowned and answered with, "Not bad. Sorry to disappoint you." He was a smart ass. David said, "Yeah, I am disappointed, but even I won't leave you to the Krauts. Come on." David lifted O'Dowd from the floor, supporting the big guy. I helped. "Corporal Peyton," David shouted. "Yes, sir," I shouted back. "We're getting out of here. Watch the door. It'll be like Leonidas and the 300. Huh? I didn't know who that dude was, but we could have used 300 men at the time. We're shooting them as they come through that narrow-ass doorway. Oh, sir. Yes, sir." Just as I feared, 2 more pointy German helmets were rushing through the front door. We 3 opened fire, quickly taking them down. The other AEF soldier who came with O'Dowd, Fitzgerald, made it to the door and was waiting for us. Together, we American soldiers pressed forward through the door, over the Germans' dead bodies and out into the dark night. I heard the sound of trucks pulling up. There was no sign of any other enemies nearby. A raid with civilians inside. Damn, David said with disgust. "Yeah," Fitzgerald said. He grabbed O'Dowd from David and gave him a brief look of gratitude for saving his friend. We all knew the unity wouldn't last, but it felt good anyway. David and I scouted some more. I was looking for Germans, but he was looking for someone else. Eventually, I said, well, at least we know she wasn't inside when it happened. I guess she's with Frenchie? David didn't say a word. We all jumped into a Davidson Cadillac armored car and sped back to the rail station to report on the attack. It was a tense trip back to base. Nobody said much of anything during that cold train ride through the darkness. That was my first encounter with the Germans, and I was still shaking after I was safely back at the base. David said nothing else before lights out. Despite everything that happened, despite nearly losing his life in a flash, I knew David's mind was on that woman.